Hey guys, Daniel here. In this recording of Socratic Hobbits, we argue about politics, or at least discuss. I was trying a new setup with my microphone, so just as soon as Kyle figured out his audio setup, I goofed mine up. Won't happen again. I'll go back to the way I was doing it. We talk about politics, raising kids, and how those affect each other. Mostly about Trump and Biden, but yeah, it's a pretty lively discussion. Hope you enjoy. There you go. So you named this one, looking at the show notes, you named it Biden and Trump.
Pretty sure you named it that. I named it To Be Decided.
I know that I made this yesterday, but it doesn't matter. So it must have been me who named it. That's all right though. So, are we doing this whole thing differently, or are we just getting into that for when we get into the kind of meat of our discussion?
I'd like to just follow the same path we've followed the previous ones. It seems to work. It's also been a while, so it's probably good to go back to our standard format.
Yeah.
Get the juices flowing again.
Sure. So I got dogpiled on at Bible study recently for not posting an episode, and it was that same week that you posted episode 5.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was kind of funny. So yeah, and I already got positive feedback. What was that?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you got dogpiled at Bible study for something else.
Excuse me. I did talk to one of the Davids about what we're gonna talk about today, which is Biden and Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been like 6 weeks since we've talked, since we've done a podcast. Although much longer for our listeners, our 6 listeners.
That's true. Well, is it 6? Because there's my wife, there's a friend, at least one friend of mine, maybe a mutual friend of ours who's not in the Vancouver area.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 3 people I know, and then...
Oh, and then, you've got the Davids. I think Kyle...
So that's...
I'm just going to have to edit
6.
all the names out. This isn't going to be any fun. My sister.
7.
Oh, boy. We're blowing up. At least we're having a good time.
Yep.
I listened to each of our episodes probably 6 times, so that puts us up to 13.
Are you counting each time?
That's... the first couple episodes I probably went through 5 or 6 times to do the editing, and I've gotten better and have stopped listening to it. I'm down to 1, and a few times I'll go back through a few times and take out some ums and different things like names. Every now and again I'll say my wife's name.
Right.
Still haven't broken that habit.
It's an important name.
To me it is, yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I figured. Does your wife listen to our podcast?
Yeah.
Mine doesn't.
She listened to episode 6 as soon as it dropped, so she got the funny version.
Yeah, I fixed it. I fixed it last night at I don't know. Well, I fixed it in the afternoon and then tried to upload it and just left the computer doing its thing by itself, and then it failed. And so I uploaded it at 10.
Okay.
So the next one is scheduled to go out on Tuesday, and I'll make sure to take a listen to it before then.
Yeah, I think I'm probably 2 episodes behind on not the notes, but the transcript.
Yeah, and on Tuesday, unless you get one done between now and then, you'll be 3.
Yep.
And then 4 on Friday, if things go the way that I hope they do. Which is fine. I'm not worried about it. I'm about 6 episodes behind on getting the videos up.
Oh, you've been posting the videos of these 2?
Well, not if I'm 6 episodes behind.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I remember you and I had talked about that.
Oh, right, because
If
your dad only listens to stuff on YouTube?
Uh-huh. So, did I tell you that I took one of the Davids to the airport at 3:40? I left at 3:50 from my house.
Today?
Uh-huh.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I'm tired. I went back to sleep, but it's still I'm not 100% here. So I don't know how, I'm trying a new setup with I was tired of monkeying around with the stand.
Uh-huh.
And I may just do some modifications to it, but it's sitting on my desk, and I'm trying really hard not to touch the desk.
Oh, got it. You need some
Yeah.
foam or something?
Yeah. Or some foam to set my coffee on. I didn't think of that. I could just try setting my coffee on a shirt. Got some clean laundry right here.
So in the notes, Daniel, you have something about writing more, which with your busy schedule, I'm curious how you've been working that in.
No, do you remember how I talked about the Leviathan method?
Right. Yeah, and I looked it up, or I tried to look it up. It seemed like I saw you dropped a link in there. It was a little bit hard to find. It looks like there are a lot of different people who have kind of taken their own twist on it, and so you kind
so it originally came from this kittyspace.org, or I don't remember exactly where the link goes to, but I'll go ahead and put this into our show notes. Yeah, so I have a bunch of different places to jump around in there, and I just wrote. I didn't. It's really easy to. Every now and again, just especially when you have some time and you can just pour it out, like it comes pretty fast. Like it just, I don't know how to describe it exactly. I didn't try to shoehorn it in between different things. When I had time and I was able and had the inclination, which a lot of writers will tell you is a terrible way to write. You shouldn't wait for the muse, but I'm not trying to get a project done within a specific time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing because I enjoy writing.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
and we kind of already talked about. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to ask: have you been writing more, or have you been filling out the method more, or both?
Actually, writing.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a specific scene that I was pretty excited about, and most of my scenes end up being 5 to 8 pages, and this one it's like 13, and it's not done. So. I'm curious to see how it probably is going to turn into an entire chapter. It was kind of the crux of where I had been stuck before, and the Leviathan method kind of helped me become unstuck. And so it's been really nice.
Would you like to give our listeners a preview of the scene?
No. I don't do that. I could post a chapter though.
For Daniel's eyes only.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, right now.
For the world in 2021.
Okay. We'll see.
How do you think you would publish it, or have you even gone that far?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I would probably at least attempt to reach out to a handful of agents. I would probably like that traditional route. And then presumably I would get rejected because that's typically how that works. And so then I would probably do the self-publishing route. If my hope would be to get some notes back from some of them. I have a list of 10 agents I'd probably submit to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's an online course that Brandon Sanderson has, who wrote. He's one of the most prolific fantasy authors alive right now.
Okay.
He publishes between 1 and 2 books almost every year, and they're twice the length of a typical novel, because fantasy just tends to be longer. Anyway, but he taught at BYU and posted his lectures on there for an entire semester. And so at one point he talks about how to find agents that would be a good fit for you.
Got it.
And so I did that. And there's also a website called Query Shark, and you can go through and read archives, and basically there are a lot of FAQs that people ask this person who has been in the business for a very long time, and they just leave it posted even though they haven't been actively answering questions in quite some time. But a lot of agents recommend that you go through those FAQs before submitting, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Have you...
Yeah.
Do you think you'll have a trilogy written, or just the one book?
Probably just be the one book. The idea is to start and finish the story within that one book. There's definitely other stories within that world, and previous to that, if it were a trilogy, it would be The Return of the King.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Yeah. Or The Last Battle, right? That's not a trilogy, but...
Right, but I get what you're saying. Is it sort of the closing chapter of at least an epic?
Yeah.
Do you think you'd have a better shot with publishers if you had multiple books ready to go?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't typically buy them packaged like that, and if they did, it would be more like... that would be a negotiated thing based on the success of the first book.
Got it.
That they would expect me to write a second and third. So at least that's what I recall reading.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's a publishing brain thing, not a writing brain thing. And as of late, I've tried not to think too hard about the money side of it because, much like this podcast, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because it makes me happy, and yeah, that's basically it.
I don't know about you, Daniel, but I'm definitely doing it for the money.
Yeah, I noticed you hadn't paid me for our website yet.
Yeah, I should probably do that.
You're just trying to get a return. Yeah, I don't know. Not a big deal. But yeah, you're just this is my podcast, and you're just a constant recurring guest.
I'm fine with that. I enjoy being your constant recurring guest, even at 7 a.m.
Even at 7 a.m. I don't know if it felt how dark it was at your place, but it was pitch black here right at 7.
It's a little bit lighter over here.
Well, now it is. But it's also 7:23. Anyway, so what have you been up to? You said you've been busy. We've both been busy. What have you been busy with?
Well, I don't remember saying that I've been busy, but been working on rehabbing my shoulder. This is going to sound like just a...
What'd you do to your shoulder?
Oh, I dislocated it, like back in June.
Oh.
And then
okay.
kept dislocating it. Finally went to physical therapy, and I've been consistently doing those exercises every day, and it seems to be getting better. I think I still need to stay away from... I don't know if I'll ever go back to full extension pull-ups. Might do mostly full extension pull-ups, but probably not full extension pull-ups.
Is a full extension pull-up where you go all the way to a dead hang?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. At least not high volume dead hang pull-ups. That does not seem to go well with my body, obviously, which was kind of part of the point of experimenting around and seeing if anything would break, and I figured out something would break. I mean, there were probably other factors there too, just changing the ergonomics of my setup, working at home, and carrying car seats around, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I haven't been doing a lot of writing on my blog recently. It's been like every other week instead of every week.
Okay.
If I get a post written this week.
What have you been writing about?
Oh, I've been writing about my rehab.
Okay. I'm sure it's yeah, do you have pretty consistent views there, or people interested in what you're doing?
I think it's less than 10 every week.
Okay. So right at our podcast level.
Yeah, actually pretty close. So maybe you want a different recurring guest, but
no, I don't think so. It does feel like we're going pretty slow right now. I also finished all the wood part of the roof of the patio. So we're paying somebody to finish out the rest of that, which I'm excited about. It'll be nice to have that.
Yeah.
Completely done. I have a little bit more to do, but not much. Probably 3 hours of work today, maybe 3.
Oh, and then you'll be done with your part of the...
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited. And then I can work on other things. Actually, my wife she's building a desk and a counter for the craft room that is kind of her space. And we had discussed at some point, and that's just whatever she wants to do with it. It's hers. And so, yeah, she's really excited about that. And she's building it she couldn't find what she wanted. And so, yeah, so we went and bought plywood, and now she's learning how to use, different saws and different things like that. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm excited that she's doing it.
Using a lot of YouTube for that, or are you showing her? Or?
Yeah, I give her help when she asks. I don't know. She maybe is using YouTube, but most of it. The thing is that the stuff that she's doing is not particularly difficult, and so usually I haven't given her a whole lot of direction, and she just gets to it. She's pretty smart. So, well, do you want to talk about Biden and Trump? Our two favorite people.
Two favorite people in the world.
Put these non-election based things in the notes for later.
Okay.
And we can just talk about those at a different time.
Yeah, I guess. So, do you think we'll have a podcast before the election after this?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Why?
I guess by that time all the mail-in ballots will have been mailed in. So
mailed in. Yeah. Do you do mail-in voting?
Yeah, I'm still in Washington.
Well, just because you're in Washington doesn't mean you do mail-in voting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I just assumed that Washington was all mail-in voting.
No, there's definitely still poll stations.
Okay. I should probably look into that, because I was sort of waiting for them to mail me my ballot. But
Well, I just got mine, like yesterday.
it's kind of weird because we just moved, and then we sent in the like change of address thing.
Oh, yeah?
But I don't know if that's so. I actually don't know if I'm going to get to vote in this election.
Well, there are polling stations, so you definitely can.
Okay.
You just, I don't know. I don't know what lines will be like. I don't know. As far as that stuff goes.
Now you've got me curious to see if.
Are you Googling something?
Yeah.
Why are you only typing with one hand? Is it because your shoulder's broken?
No, that's actually my broken shoulder. I was just typing with one hand because the other hand is by the mic.
Oh. All right. Well, I'll just cut this whole very long 1.5-minute pause that we've had while you're typing and looking up your closest polling station out. Or maybe I'll leave it in.
Oh, sure enough.
That way everybody knows what I have
There
I have to deal with.
There are polling stations on the WSU campus and in Colfax.
Uh-huh.
They also have a staffed ballot box deposit site.
Uh-huh. You say staffed or stuff?
Well, it is Washington. But it is also the conservative side of Washington.
Yeah, that is accurate.
Okay.
Are you all done?
I'm all done.
So, I have been considering voting for Biden, and I am a pretty conservative person. And, yeah, that's at least one of the points of discussion that we have.
But you're far more open politically than some of our other friends.
I am. Yeah, that's true. And you know what? I would consider you one of those people I'm more open than, but I don't know if that's true or not, or if you would agree with that or disagree. I'm not saying you're at like a...
I think I'd probably agree.
Yeah, okay.
But the thing with the conservative, progressive spectrum is their dimensions, it goes in every dimension, right? And
Yeah,
so they're...
sure.
On every issue, if you wanted to categorize things that way, people have different ways that they're more conservative or more progressive, just depending on life experience and their personality, which is impacted by life experience.
And their focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could be conservative. Like, you could essentially toe the party line in areas that you don't want to spend any time or energy thinking about.
Right. And I think
that would be...
I've talked to another friend about how we all, just because we're finite, we have to have those areas that we trust authority on. And maybe eventually we get to the point where we get challenged on the authority that we've trusted. And then we have to, well, we don't have to, but I think it's good intellectual practice to, or it's honest intellectual practice to actually consider the challenge based off of our core beliefs. And I think it's important to frame this whole conversation in the context of government and its purpose. I've been reading a book by Dr. David Van Drunen from Westminster Seminary recently called Politics After Christendom. And in that book, he frames, I'm only a couple chapters into it so far, not necessarily because I'm trying to read it slowly, but because I've found it's not a dense book, but it has points in it that I really want to ponder and think about. So a lot of times I'll read a section or a few paragraphs and then just stop and think about what he said and how that has bearing on my life. So at the very start of it, he just stated baldly that the purpose of government is to promote justice and stop. And
stop injustice?
Sorry, and stop. Like, stop from the telegraph days.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
That is the whole purpose. And he gets there. Well, actually, I'm curious, what do you think of that statement?
The purpose of government is to promote...
Specifically...
Or to enforce? Was promote the word you used?
Yeah, promote. Civil government.
As opposed to...
Ecclesiastical church.
Sure. I don't think of our church as having a government, but they do have... Anyway, whatever. The purpose of civil government is to promote justice.
This is kind of getting into book club, but I think it's a helpful way to frame this discussion.
That's fine. We're into our big questions in book club and all that. We're having our discussion, Kyle. I don't see any issue with that. I think that there's also an element of I would say that is pretty much the entire purpose of civil government with its citizens. There's an external piece of protection as well, but other than that, I think it's right.
And I mean, you're totally right that there's that element of protection. I would say that that element of protection falls under promoting justice, because if a foreign power attacks your country unjustly, it's the job of civil government to protect its citizenry from that unjust attack.
Okay. Yeah, anyway. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit of a leap for most people, and that's why I would be more explicit about it. But anyway, so this book, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. And what's been interesting to me is he actually bases that on the Noahic covenant. So the story of the rainbow and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And his point is that in that covenant in Genesis, that's the only covenant that, as you look throughout Scripture, that only talks about preservation. It doesn't talk about salvation. So Noah's been saved through the flood, and then after the flood, God establishes rules for essentially the preservation of the human race.
Do you recall that where that is?
It's in the teen. No, it's got to be before the teens. So right around Genesis 9 or 10.
Is it? Do you think it's titled God's Covenant with Noah?
That's a pretty good guess.
Okay.
Do you just want to read it?
Yeah, sure. Oh, did you mean out loud, not just to myself?
Oh, yeah.
Just kidding. I was just trying to get where he's like, okay, so in the, he built an altar, and the preservation, and the Lord said in his heart, I'll never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither again will I strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And then he commands Noah, be fruitful and multiply, and says, the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast in the earth. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, which is perhaps good reason not to be a vegetarian as a Christian. Got some scriptural backing there. Let's see. And then he talks about don't murder each other and to be fruitful. And then he says, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, every beast of the earth with you. As many came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant I make with you. I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth.
So yeah.
And he goes on and talks, yeah.
So there are two important concepts there. One of them comes from the idea that, or comes from the statement, as long as the earth exists. So it's civil government is provisional. It's for this time. It's not something that extends into the new heavens and the new earth. And then the other thing is that it's legitimate. God establishes it. So because it's...
How do you get that God establishes... Sorry. Finish your thought, and then I guess I'll ask my question.
Well, you look at the part about if any man sheds another man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. That's... If you look at Romans, where Paul talks about the authority of the state to have the sword to enforce justice, it ties in. It seems to tie in fairly closely to that, where this is where the state gets its authority to promote justice.
Either I'm being dense or your logic doesn't make sense. So
could be either.
It's like a 50-50. Yeah, it could be either. Could be both. I guess I don't need to, or I don't see how this establishes governments in any way. Is that what you're saying that it does?
It establishes the authority of government. And
so I don't see that at all, even with the tie-in. Like, I would say that, that piece in Romans, is perhaps a way that God is keeping his covenant. That's one of the tools that he's using. Uses crooked sticks to draw straight lines kind of thing, but the authority is just that they're in power and that they have the ability to do certain things. Not, I don't know. Yeah.
So it sounds like, I mean, I don't think this is an area you want to go, but it sounds like you're saying that government is a necessary evil with the crooked sticks.
Yeah, I mean, what did God say to the Israelites when they wanted a king? He was like, yeah, this is a good thing. Here you go. He definitely didn't say that.
Oh. Who does Israel prefigure? Who is Israel?
I mean, the church? Is that what you're saying now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So this gets back to civil authority versus ecclesiastical authority.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess why I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but yeah, I do think that the government is kind of a necessary evil.
Okay.
I think organizations over a certain size are problematic. They get a lot of things done, and it's how things are right now in our country and the world, but there are definitely problems.
Well, how large was the organization of government when the country first started relative to now? Was it still too big?
I mean, it was much smaller. I'm not familiar enough with the founding of our country I mean, I'm fairly familiar, but I don't know the ins and outs of, are you considering when the Treasury and State, the State Treasury got started? Is that close enough to the founding that you would consider that the beginning, or would you say that was when they started to get off the rails?
I wouldn't say one way or the other. I mean, to take that idea further, would you say that a monarchy works better or is better because there's only one person in authority?
A monarchy definitely works better. I don't know that it is better. Although as a society, we did that not as a society, as a world, we did that for what? 3,000 years, 4,000, more like 7, right? All of written history, there were monarchs, pretty much. Or at least one person who was in a firm authority. But they were smaller organizations in the feudal system. I mean, but the thing is that even saying that, the feudal system was really bad for many, many people. I don't know.
Why was it bad? I'm not asking for what made it bad. I'm asking for why.
It wasn't just. Yeah, there you go. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't just for most people. And I would say government for the most part hasn't been just for most of human history.
And I guess I'm coming from the perspective that civil government does have a mandate to be just. For example, if you look at all the minor prophets and you look at the people outside of Israel, in, say, Obadiah, what are the people outside of Israel condemned for? Or are they ever condemned for idolatry?
For people outside of Israel?
Yeah.
I'm guessing by the way you're framing the question, yes. It's been a while since I've read Obadiah, and I have a hard time understanding prophets. So, is that right?
No, they're never condemned for idolatry. They're always condemned for injustice. Now, the Israelites, the people of God, the church, is condemned for both injustice and idolatry.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting that those outside of the explicit people of God are only held accountable for one of those two things, and that being injustice.
Yeah, do you recall what Nineveh was? I don't recall, so I'm not asking like a test question, but do you recall what the Ninevites were condemned for, or asked, given the choice by
in the time of Jonah? Well, I mean, it was other prophets too.
Yeah.
I'm
thinking of the Jonah story.
It was innocent blood that they'd shed. Innocent bloodshed.
Okay. So, okay. And I agree that governments should be just. I really don't see it right here, Kyle, in Genesis 9. But
not even the seeds. I think it's fair to say that it's not explicitly, it's not fleshed out in the same way that the story of Christ is not fleshed out in Genesis 3.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way, I think you can say in Genesis 3, the seeds of Christ coming and as a sacrifice.
There's like a foreshadowing, basically.
Yeah, you could describe it that way. I'd want to say it's stronger than foreshadowing because it's. I'm trying to think what the difference would be between foreshadowing and.
And the seeds of something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
You're the author. Can you think of a difference, or are they the same thing?
Well, I mean, if you didn't like foreshadowing maybe feels more ethereal,
Right.
whereas the seeds are like, you got you got little, rocks that you put in the ground and plants grow out of them.
Right. Yeah, there's more
And
connection
it's
with the
it's
seeds.
concrete. But I think that yeah, I think foreshadowing can be like red herrings and foreshadowing are pretty linked. In that sometimes you think something's foreshadowing, but the author has done that. I mean, the only other, if you didn't want to use foreshadowing and seeds is an analogy and not a metaphor, or not a metaphor isn't anyway, one or the other. You could say it's a type, like it's a,
Mm-hmm.
like Melchizedek is a type of Christ, is a, the Redeemer in Ruth is a type of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another types and images? Is that the kind of phrase?
I guess types and shadows actually is the
Yeah.
phrase. So yeah, I guess shadow is
But you wouldn't want to say foreshadow. You can say types and shadows though, and that
point taken.
that way.
Foreshadowing
Okay,
works.
that's fine. Um, I've been going through a workshop with some guys, and there's a list of. Uh, it's about how to identify your emotions, which is a harder practice than I would have thought, especially with outside help. But there's 50 different words that you can use to describe emotions, and
Uh-huh.
they're all, they're all distinct. Like they are all separate feelings. And we were kind of joking at the beginning that guys have essentially three feelings: good, bad, and hungry. And it's just, even with this chart that we're looking at,
Right.
that has kind of 8 main pieces, and then each of those has 4 slightly more specific versions of those, and then each of those 4 has an additional 2, so there's a tree kind of,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of trying to help you work through that. I could see it
It's
being
like-
difficult because of how interconnected I imagine my emotions are.
Yes and no. So you obviously have to decide for yourself at some point, but as you're looking, it's pretty easy to determine one of the 8,
Okay.
and then it's a little harder for the 4 outside of that. And then sometimes I can't get past that second ring. Sometimes I can't get past the first ring as far as nuance. But for the word foreshadow to mean to you something different than it does to me doesn't surprise me in the least bit. For you to have some experience where that was much less concrete than seeds or, types and shadows, whatever. For those to have a more specific meaning to you, it's no big deal.
I wonder if it is just that I've heard types and shadows used in sermons, and I've heard foreshadowing used more in literary settings.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because there's actually a pretty good, in my opinion, there's a pretty good chance that you don't have any idea, and it's almost impossible for you to figure out exactly why you don't like that word. So my brother-in-law.
For the situation.
Yeah, exactly. So my brother-in-law has a son, which you know, and
Oh, okay. That brother-in-law.
Tyler.
Yeah.
And for 2 months, he wouldn't go to sleep without mom or dad right there. And for reasons I don't know, it was mostly my brother-in-law who ended up basically sleeping next to him until he fell asleep.
Uh-huh.
And he's a daddy's boy, my nephew. And I suggested to him that perhaps it was because he was comforted so many times in the the middle of the night by dad and not
That seems reasonable. Yeah, I can see that.
but my nephew would never have any idea that that's why he feels that way or acts that way. And I'm not saying, I want to be really clear, I'm not saying that my sister did anything wrong, or that it's just that's a
Oh, for sure.
there's
Yeah.
stuff that there's stuff that happened in my life that I would never really be able to parse out because I was so young when it happened, and I just have likes and dislikes now.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone last night actually about how formative those first 2 or 3 years are for our likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
Which is really scary as a parent.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, man, I bet your little ones are just growing and growing.
Yep.
How yeah, we can talk about family offline.
It was pretty fun last night because the people we had over have a couple little boys, and so my son was just running around and tumbling and roughhousing with them.
Oh, that's great. I have decided at this point that I'm going to switch back to the I can't touch my desk. I can't really move without clipping on my microphone. So, oh well, learning. So, are you going to vote for Trump or are you going to vote for Biden?
I'm leaning towards Trump at this point.
So, I asked you a question when we talked on the phone about this, and then afterwards you texted me like 6 or 7 times during Bible study, I think.
You cut me off.
So I had to go.
Bible study never starts on time, Daniel.
I wasn't on time. I was late.
Had they already started?
I was late. No.
Exactly.
Yeah, but part of it's about the fellowship too. So cool your jets.
We were having fellowship.
We.
You're right. It is about the fellowship.
Yeah, it is about that's definitely a big reason. So Trump has explicitly bragged about his treatment of women. Like specifically, the phrase that he used is grabbing them by the
right,
which is pretty crass, and I'm not sure if I should bleep that out or not.
Well, I think in order to keep it, I think in order to not fall afoul of regulations, you either need to bleep it out or add a parental advisory to this podcast.
Well, in any case, you are considering voting for a man who said that, and I'll figure out the whatever with the words later. So, and I believe that Biden has not been explicit in that way about how he should or shouldn't treat women.
At least we don't have any hot mic occurrences with him.
Sure. Do you think that is the only instance of that kind of talk from Trump that we have?
That's the main one that's been put out there. I'm not saying that that's the only time he said that. I'm not.
No, I know.
And
it's not like you say something like that once, only ever.
Right.
And then learn your lesson.
Do you think Biden has never said anything or acted in any way like that?
The phrase that you used when you talked about Trump was he owned it.
I think you're confusing me with someone else.
I remember having the conversation right before Bible study, but, if that's not what you think you said.
He owned it. I do not remember saying that because he has been very explicit about not ever admitting to what you've said or repenting of it.
Oh, really? He definitely didn't repent of it. I mean, he said he doesn't really have anything to repent for.
Owned it.
Owned it. Yeah, so he...
That sounds like what someone else would say.
All right. Maybe it was, it could have been somebody else. I know I was talking about it with somebody else. All right.
That sounds like terminology that I've heard from someone else who's a much more enthusiastic Trump supporter.
Yeah, you can just say one of the Davids, and then they'll have no idea which one we're talking about.
I think
unless you don't mean that.
No, I do mean that.
What were you gonna say? I cut you off.
Oh, you filled in what I was going to say.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I was talking about it with one of them, and by the way,
he owned it.
He owned it. That really doesn't sound like. Yeah, I guess maybe that doesn't sound like you.
What does that even mean?
Like,
what was your impression of what that meant? Whoever you had that conversation with, I'm very curious. What?
Okay, so let's pause it. Let's bring it back just a little bit.
Okay.
So instead of saying he owned it, say he isn't. Gosh, I had it a second ago.
He's the type of person who would say that. Is that what you're getting at?
No. Trump is he's unashamed of who he is, and
that's
like like he is not political about, like, he kind of just says whatever comes to his mind.
Yes.
And
I would agree with that.
He doesn't doesn't apologize for
He's
things that he say that are particularly un-PC.
he's openly narcissistic.
Yeah, definitely. And he does treat. I mean, yeah, I guess he doesn't really treat women any worse than he treats men. Other than like as far as in the public sphere, talking about like he calls them names and degrades them in different ways, but he does that with men too.
Yep.
So at least he's a jerk all around. Like he's not someone who I would want to interact with. And
Definitely.
I didn't watch the debate, but like I wouldn't want to have a conversation with him where we disagreed about anything.
Did I tell you what one of my friends said about the debate? His kid said about the debate?
No.
His kid. He said that they watched the first 15 minutes of it, and after they turned it off, his son looked up at him and said, "Daddy, why did none of their parents spank them when they were children?"
Oh, we can't say that, Kyle.
Is that a parental advisory?
Yeah, that's a parental advisory. The other stuff was like, not sure. That one for sure, though. Why did their parents not? Yeah. Well, I mean, Trump's dad was probably too busy working. I don't know about Biden.
And I think that actually, I mean, all joking aside, that actually gets back to why I can see myself voting for Trump more than Biden is...
Why is that?
He has a record of placing justices in, or judges in positions who are more likely to protect the rights of parents over the state.
Sure. Well, that's how you raise your kids is important.
And I think that's what I've seen is how you raise your kids is more your business under conservative leadership and more the state's business under progressive leadership.
Is there a reason you're avoiding the word liberal?
Yes.
You've used progressive in its place several times.
The reason I avoid the word liberal is because because of the confusion with the classical liberal, which is a very different meaning than the way people use liberal. A lot of people use liberal colloquially, but I like preserving the original intent of the word rather than...
Which is is libertarian come from the same word as the classical version of liberal?
I think liberal... I don't know if they have the same root, obviously, but in general, a classical liberal is going to be is going to view government as more legitimate than a libertarian.
And as far as what are some differences between a classical liberal and a progressive?
Well, a progressive views the state as having a larger role in the economy, for one, whereas a classical liberal is a proponent of free markets.
Okay.
That's one really stark difference between the two of them.
And what does that have to do with justice?
Well, if the state says... There are a couple ways you could look at it. One is saying, like, the state should not be involved or should have... The state's only role in economics should be to regulate behavior that promotes injustice. And outside of that, the state should not be involved in economics. Now, it gets more hairy when, in my mind, the state gets involved in redistribution and says the government knows how to handle money better than anyone else. And so we are going to...
Or when the government says... Oh, sorry.
So the government's going to take money from people and use it as the elite see fit.
Or when the government says, here's this class of people that you can have work for lower than minimum wage.
Or...
By the way, I did find a list of all of the companies in the U.S. Let's see. I'll put a link to the show notes and who it is, but it's all the companies who use slave labor.
How many of the Fortune 500 companies are there?
I can do a cross-reference. I don't know. Walmart is one of them. There are some financial companies who do. There's a lot of small private companies that are not even traded on the NASDAQ. Most of them were. So,
I mean, that kind of makes sense that if you're a larger company, you wouldn't want to potentially...
There are some very large companies on there. I will say I used Apple as an example last time, and they are not on there.
Well,
they also do own like 200 subsidiaries or something, or a lot of subsidiaries.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about doing some work and trying to see if I could cross-reference any of them, but didn't have the time.
It's a lot of investigative journalism.
Nah, it's data monkey stuff, and I love that. It's a lot of fun. Remember how we were talking? I'm okay at Excel.
Yeah.
It would be a lot of that stuff.
Cool.
Because it's all in tables, and I can futz around with it.
So we were talking about how Trump's more likely to put in justices that would
preserve your right to treat your children the way that you think they ought to be treated.
Right.
Or raised. Raised is probably
a better word.
Okay. That's a fair point. I have a hard time trusting anything that Trump says because he says so many things, and they're like.
And that's why I'm going off of what he's done the last 4 years.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fair point.
And saying, okay, what has Biden done the last 30 years? What has Trump done the last 4?
It's kind of stressful to just have as a president in general because he makes such a hullabaloo out of everything.
The other question, and we talked about this too, the other question I have surrounds Biden's just mental fitness and who will actually...
I think that's been blown way out of proportion, is my opinion.
His senior moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can cut different things together to make it. I mean, I guess I just haven't seen an uncut Biden stall. And so maybe if I found some of those, it would be like, oh, maybe there is more of a problem there.
Yeah.
I am probably just not going to vote for a president because I dislike both of them so much.
Who would you write in? Do you have any thoughts on who you'd write in?
Kyle Morse.
No, would you go with the Unity Party idea?
I don't. Are you talking about what Mr. Joe Rogan said?
He wasn't the original creator of that. That was the Weinstein brothers who were the original creators of the Unity Party.
Well, yeah, they were on Joe Rogan's podcast, and that was when it came up. That was when he. Yeah, I would be fine with them, but I also haven't looked into them. I just know they're not these two guys. I was gonna start. I for whatever reason I'm thinking of Yiddish words for them because I don't want to call them worse names. But yeah, no, I really we've got 330 million people, and we decided to have two very old guys.
Okay, so
they should both be.
Here's a second reason I have for voting for just leaving out that it's Trump. But voting for a Republican for president is it looks pretty likely that the Republicans will lose control of the Senate. And so if you had all three, both legislative bodies and the executive branch, all in the Democratic Party, I am concerned about what trajectory that would put us on, especially as people would try and swing back very hard from where we've been going with Trump. I think there would be some overshooting that I'd like to see
avoided.
I'd like to see mitigated by just some variation in the parties in the different branches. Because that
is there one particular area that you would be concerned about?
The main area does come back to social issues, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the way
they got Twitter to apologize for censoring different. Did you hear about all that hubbub yesterday?
Oh, censoring the Biden email thing from the New York Post?
Yeah. Yeah, they apologized. They said we did the wrong thing.
They're in a weird position right now.
They are. Yeah. Well, I can't see Trump as just a Republican because I don't think that he is.
Right.
I know he's running on the Republican ticket, but
I see him as someone who would act as a barrier for some policies the Democrats might want to enact.
So it's like he's just a big old wall?
Yep. Maybe a leaky wall, but...
A leaky wall? A wall you might be able to get a ladder over, but, it's better than no wall.
More of a wall than Biden would be.
Yeah.
Or Harris.
Or Harris, yeah, I was just going to say. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just not convinced because Trump is... who he is. Like, if he wasn't so... I just can't get past who he is in order to vote for him.
And I think that is 100%, 110% fair.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well,
I think I would go so far as to commend you for that.
But not enough to change your vote.
Probably not.
And that's just wild to me. Like, I don't understand why he's the evangelicals' vote in general.
I don't understand that either.
But you're an evangelical, and you're voting for him. So how do you not understand that?
I'm voting for him not because I support him, but because I don't want the other side to have free reign.
All right. Yeah, and that just, as a philosophy, doesn't work for me.
And I think that's totally fair. Because, I mean, he has done, like, the military's in shambles right now for all he says about how he's been really good for the military.
Oh, yeah?
Which is a really scary thought. The thing is, I don't see it getting any better under a Biden-Harris regime.
Regime?
It's probably not the right word, but...
Yeah. Would you call it a Trump regime now?
It does seem like he's the only one. It doesn't seem like Pence gets to do very much, which I'd love it if Pence actually got more control of things.
Involved with anything?
If Trump had an aneurysm and then Pence could just run things.
Well, yeah. I thought it would be really interesting if both Trump and Biden got COVID real bad, and
then it was Pence and Harris.
But then it was Pence and Harris. That would be.
I'd be happy with Pence. I think he would. Everything I've seen of him makes me think that he would be a good president.
I think he's as outgoing.
Exactly. He'd be more of a return to the pre-Teddy Roosevelt presidents, which I think would be a really good thing for our country.
Yeah.
Because the president was never intended to be a sort of
figurehead.
Yeah, figurehead for the country. The president wasn't supposed to be a king. The president was just supposed to be a single head of one of three offsetting branches of power.
But we want a king, Kyle.
Do we, though?
I mean, nobody cares about the other three branches, the other two branches near as much.
Really? Have you heard some of the things that have been going on about the Supreme Court hearings?
Yeah, I have heard. I also know in my lifetime, this is one of the first times that I've been aware of anything happening related to the Supreme Court. And maybe that's because they're lifetime appointments. I don't know.
What about, I remember John Roberts' hearing under Bush.
Nope, didn't cross my radar, not even a little.
Really?
I think people get pretty excited about the presidential election. It's always a big deal.
And I think that's a problem with our understanding of civics here in America. Not a good thing.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that the people want a king, and that's, we're essentially voting for a king for 4 years, except he doesn't have as much power as he would like right now. I don't know. And, yeah. Do you want to talk about this one issue voting, or do you want to pause and...
No, we could talk about the one issue voting.
Yeah. So, and it actually kind of dovetails into what you've been talking about, is that, like, you're, to the exclusion of essentially everything else about Trump, you're okay with, like, you even commended me for it, like, despite Trump's personal life and choices, and even his record related to other things, potentially, you feel that he's good for to continue his record related to putting justices in place. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of your, like, one issue, maybe.
Well, the way I look at it is more, I look at the two of them and go, okay, on these two issues, are they different? No. On these two issues, are they different? No. On these two issues, are they different? No. On these two issues, are they different? Okay, yes, they're different here. That's how I look at it.
So what issues are Biden and Trump roughly equivalent or exactly the same on?
On foreign policy, I think they're pretty equivalent. On foreign policy and trade, well, Biden is probably would be more interventionists than Trump, militarily.
Well, I thought you said they would be the same militarily.
So that's a different issue, which is how they treat the armed forces, and I think both of them mistreat the armed forces.
Okay.
They might get stretched more, because I could see if you had a full Democratic majority, I could see the military budgets getting cut, even as we send troops more places, which would actually be worse for the military.
Okay.
Let's see here.
I think economics, they wouldn't be wildly different.
Right. Yeah. I think they're both... I think in a second term, you're right that Trump would probably try and spend similar amounts of money to Biden. Education, Biden's going to provide more support for the standard current public school setting by dumping more money into it. And Trump, with Betsy DeVos running the education department, is going to provide more opportunities for students to have access to charter schools and more competition in education. So I'd give Trump an edge, not Trump, but Trump's administration an edge on
Yeah, you got to be careful there, Kyle.
education and education spending.
Okay.
On, let's see here, immigration, I think Biden would be, what I read on Biden's site made me think that he would be better for justice when it comes to immigration than Trump. Trump is obviously very outspoken about being protectionist of current Americans, which I don't think is good for our economy or the view of Americans by the rest of the world. I think it's really beneficial to make it possible for people to come from other countries to work here, even if it does, quote unquote, take away American jobs. We actually end up creating more American jobs because companies keep work here instead of just shipping it wholesale overseas. And I don't think Trump understands that.
Yeah, although he's making it more difficult to ship stuff to China.
I think Biden and Trump are going to be very similar in China, from what I've read.
Okay.
I don't think there would be a vast difference there.
What about? Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. And then I was going to say we get to the social issues, and I think from what I read on Biden's site, his administration would be supportive of policies that are going to criminalize reading certain passages of scripture.
Out loud.
Exactly.
Do you what would you got a link that you can send me?
Yeah, it's
Is this from his website?
from his website, yeah.
Okay. What about justice as far as the criminal justice system?
As far as the criminal justice system goes, I think Biden, looking at his voting record, that's been actually kind of his bread and butter. I mean, he's been on both sides of it, right? Like, he was on the side of increasing. I think I saw some quote from him where he's talking about how the 94 legislation added 60 death penalty laws and 125,000 prison cells, and he was trumpeting that. And then more recent.
Oh, probably from a long time ago.
Yeah, more recently he's been focused more on the other side with doing good things like providing opportunities for psychiatric care and trying to reduce recidivism.
And what about Trump?
I actually don't know what Trump's policy is on this, other than
I know he stands shoulder to shoulder with them.
with the police.
He says that. I'm
Which,
not sure what that means, but he's standing there.
yeah,
What were you gonna say?
I think one of the difficulties I have, or one of the things that really gave me a bad taste for Biden, was when he talked about how much time he spent with Jacob Blake and his family. He was the man who was shot by the police and paralyzed.
Okay.
And he talked.
Was that pretty recent?
It was a couple months ago.
Okay.
And
So yes, pretty recent.
yeah. So the guy he talked about spending a lot of time with and being really supportive of. Do you know what he had arrest warrants out for?
No, I don't.
Rape.
That seems bad.
But that was just
So was
just brushed under the rug, and it was just the woman who had accused him brushed under the rug. And so when I see that, and I see him focusing on just the police brutality in the situation, which, I mean, it does look bad that the police shot him in the back like that. If you just look at that, that was wrong. But to then turn around and ignore what the police were chasing this guy for, and what his record was, and what he might do in the future, that doesn't seem just.
No, I totally agree with you.
And that seems really slimy to use that as a political platform to.
Do you think that police should be able to shoot people as they're running away in general?
No.
Okay, but in this case, it was acceptable?
No, I'm not saying that it was. I said
I see.
I said it was wrong
Okay.
for the police to shoot him in the back, but to then turn
Mm-hmm.
around and ignore why the police were chasing him in the first place and just focus on one side of that is concerning to me.
Yeah. Okay.
It shows a lack of judgment. Like there should be plenty of other situations given the pandemic of police brutality that we've been told about. There should be plenty of other situations to talk about that aren't a guy who raped someone allegedly.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say that came off as pretty harsh as far as the nonchalantness with the pandemic of police brutality. The way that you said that came off as pretty uncaring to me. And I don't know if that's how you meant it, but if you don't think that police brutality is a thing, I'm curious to hear that.
No, I think it is a thing. I think it's a thing in spots. It's not a thing true all across America.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's been talked about as if it's a thing no matter where you have police. The existence of police is bad.
I haven't heard that, but I also don't pay attention to the news near as much as some others, and I definitely don't hear from, like I don't have, I talk a little bit about politics with a handful of people, but, you know, and I read news stories maybe once a week. I glance through the headlines and we'll read a story or two, or I'll go through and read the politician's website and see what they're saying about themselves.
Well, I mean, take the city of Seattle. The city of Seattle had one of the first black female police chiefs in the nation, and one of their city councilors essentially forced her to resign by first cutting her pay by close to 50%.
Wow. When was this?
This was back in May or June.
Wow.
And
Why did he? Okay, go on.
And then, well, they cut the whole police staff's pay by, it may have been 30 or 40%, but it was a significant amount. And then the police chief said, "Hey, this isn't right. This is not helping us promote justice in the city of Seattle by just telling all the police officers we don't care about you, and in fact we're cutting your pay." And so the city council said, "Well, we'll reinstate your pay, but all the other cuts are going to stay in place." And the police chief did the honorable thing and said, "No, if you're going to cut pay for all my officers, I'm going to resign." And then the response from the city councilor who promoted this bill was that black female police chief was too tainted by systemic racism because she was in the police, and that's why it was a good thing that she'd been forced to resign.
Wow.
So that's the mentality that I'm referencing.
Okay.
And that's the mentality that I am concerned Biden isn't going to stand up to.
And do you feel confident that Trump would?
He's at least so here's something that a friend of mine on Facebook wrote when Trump was elected the first time. The reason people voted for Trump is that essentially a lot of Americans were feeling like they were on the side of the highway with a flat and no way to fix it. And all the politicians are just whizzing by in their sports cars until one man, Trump, pulls up in his Lamborghini and offers to help them with the tire. Now, there's no indication that this guy can actually change the tire, but at least he stopped and made it sound like he was concerned enough to help. And that's why he got their vote in 2016.
Yeah.
And I would say in certain regards, Trump actually did work on changing the tire. In other regards, he's been totally derelict of duty. But I think Biden's still whizzing by in his car.
Just trying to play the game.
Yeah. And Harris is definitely playing the game. If you look at what she does as Attorney General in California and then the positions she took during the campaign, they are diametrically opposed. So I have no idea what Harris will
I don't
do.
like Harris. Whatever she needs to, which is the problem, right?
Especially when she's one heartbeat away from being president.
Yeah, that sounds vaguely threatening, Kyle. But, that sounds... I'm going to cut that.
You're going to cut that?
That's what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to cut that. Yeah, one heartbeat away from president? That just...
I'd much rather have Pence be one heartbeat away from being president.
I know, but you can't publish things that talk about the death of somebody like that. You just can't.
I mean, when When Theodore Roosevelt became vice president, people said
Uh-huh.
that. You realize that you've just made a very ambitious man one heartbeat away from being president. Of course, at the time, Teddy thought that his political career was over because at the time, vice presidents generally didn't get to run for president. That was sort of like the end of your political career.
Was that when you still, like, the runner-up became the vice president, or no?
No, that had been done away
okay.
with after the first couple
Long time
elections.
ago.
That was a Washington ideal.
They were like, this is a stupid idea. It does, I mean, it sounds nice. It actually, I would be okay with that, I think.
That would actually lead to, I mean, that's sort of the idea behind the Unity Party.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you have two people with different views.
They're also both more centrist than,
Yes.
so...
They're more in line with the American people than with the drivers of the parties.
Sure, but I also have no idea what the vice president's actual duties are, if he has any.
They're the biggest thing is in a split Senate, they are the deciding vote.
Okay. You and I were thinking a lot more while we were talking during this episode. There's going to be a lot of silence that gets cut out.
It's a good thing we went a little bit longer then.
No, we always go about this long, and I bet it won't be that much more long. The episode won't be that much shorter.
Do you think it's because it was in the morning?
It is possible, and also possible because I woke up at 3:45 and then went back to bed at 4:45.
That's an early
and then
flight.
woke up at 6:45. They were. And David, I thought you were going to get me coffee or something. Kind of sad about that.
You thought he was going to spend money on you?
I did, yeah. So, I mean, he's got a Keurig machine. He could have brought it out. But I'm just kidding.
Those K-Cups are expensive.
I know, but he's just got them sitting there. They've been there for a long time. By the way, the most last episode, number 7, you sound wonderful. Yeah. So whatever you did with your whole podcast setup is working really good.
Sweet.
You want to talk about anything more lighthearted, or do you just want to just end it with comments about, I don't know,
Heartbeats.
Heartbeats away from vice presidents becoming sitting presidents. What are you doing today?
Today I'm probably going hunting with my dad and his cousin for deer. We'll just head out in the afternoon.
Deer?
Yeah.
I thought deer is elk in September.
And
deer in
it really
October?
depends on the season. Actually, right now is elk season too, so it'll be kind of crazy up there. But
Did you just say it depends on the season?
it depends on the unit, like where in the state,
Oh, sure.
because
I see.
different places have different
Seasons?
yeah, different seasons. So but
Okay.
generally speaking, you could say archery is during September, rifle is during October, and then muzzleloader is during December. And then
cannons are in January.
what?
Cannons are in January.
No, nobody hunts during January unless it's for ducks.
Yeah, and I remember you guys talking about that. It sounds miserable.
It was a miserably good time.
All right. Have you heard of duck cannons?
You mean punt guns, like from the turn of the
I don't know.
century when they just like shoot for meat?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they would like kill like 50 ducks in one shot.
yeah. It's called a punt. It's called a punt gun.
Yeah, that looks like my kind of sport.
That's not a sport. That's hunting for meat. That's like Bill Cody and the buffalo. Just
Sure.
mow them down.
Think about all that duck.
Hey guys, Daniel again here. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please write in Kyle Morse for your state representative. You can also contact us at socratichobbits@gmail.com. Thanks again.